حشود في بورسعيد في السودان بتقول يا مبارك يا مبارك عيالك راحوا فين؟
I just want to let the world
يا
know
مبارك
that
مبارك
we have been disconnected from our love, communication, the internet, and the very strong
What you just heard are the actual voices of people from Egypt and from all around the world. On Tuesday, January 25th, the youth of Egypt began a revolution demanding the rights and demanding an end to the over 30-year-long repressive regime of the dictator Hosni Mubarak. Mubarak's forces at that time had cut off every single Egyptian's access to not only the internet, but to their cell phone and to their landlines. They had absolutely no means of communication. In response to this, Twitter teamed up with Google, and they created, under the leadership of Ujjwal Singh, Speak to Tweet. Now, what Speak to Tweet is it's a service that allows people to call a number on their cell phone, one of 3 numbers, and then leave a voice message, and that voice message then gets posted as a link on a Twitter feed. That child that looks like a little hobbit, that's me with my mom on my first birthday in Kuwait. I was born there in Kuwait in May of 1986. And my mother is actually, my family is not Kuwaiti. My father was just working there as an architect and an engineer. My mom is actually from Egypt, from Alexandria, and my father is Palestinian. He's from the West Bank. In 1990, at the age of 4, my family was forced to flee Kuwait due to the Iraqi invasion. We were forced to flee, not only forced to flee, but exiled because my father was Palestinian and because, of course, politics destroy everything for several people sometimes. And what ended up happening was because Arafat supported Hussein, we wouldn't allow access back to Kuwait. So what we did is we fled by car, driving through Iraq and went to Jordan. And because we didn't really know where to go, we ended up flying to Egypt, to Alexandria, and living with my mother's family there. So because of this, Egypt is a safe haven for me and my family, and it holds a very dear place in my heart. This is me with my cousins. I'm holding a donut. I've always had a sweet tooth, apparently. And that was the fall after we moved to Egypt. And then this is just a picture of me several years later with my family. And my family still lives in Egypt, my mother's family. They live in Alexandria. I have several friends who live in Cairo, who live and work and study there, and my cousins as well. And during the revolution, while they were protesting, while they were actively participating in protecting their neighborhoods and standing up for their country and for their rights, I was here in Ann Arbor, unable to reach them. When Speak to Tweet was launched, I frantically listened to all the voicemails and searched through all the voicemails, hoping that maybe one of the Mohammeds that called in was my cousin, because there's Mohammeds all over Egypt, and maybe one of the passionate and defiant women that called in that are so common to my family was a cousin or an aunt, or perhaps even a friend. I was tired of feeling powerless, and I decided that I had to do something, especially after listening to this specific voicemail.
إخواني، حسني مبارك فصل عني كل حاجة، مش حاضر أتصل فيك، لا تليفون ولا إنترنت ولا رسائل. أنا طالع على الميدان وودعكم عشان مش عارف ممكن يحصل إيه. ادعولي أرجع لكم تاني ولا لا. أرجوكم كملوا الراية من بعدي.
This was actually the very first voicemail that I translated, and it was actually suggested to me by Subi, who introduced me, that I should start a blog putting up all my translations for people to be able to read. So that's what I did. I started a blog at WordPress called Translate Speak to Tweet, and I just, for an entire week, all I did was I sat at my computer, I didn't go to class, I just did these translations, but eventually I realized that I could not keep up with the thousands of voice messages that were coming in by myself. So another student here, Iman Abdelhadi, started helping me. And she was incredible, but there was still just 2 versus thousands of people. And we'd also gotten mentions overnight in MSNBC News and later on in Arab Detroit. And so while the blog had over 10,000 views at this point, and it happened really quickly, we'd only posted about, I think, maybe 20 or 30 translations. So 2 days into the week, I ended up connecting with a man. This is the slide of one of the pages of my blog. But 2 days into the week, after doing these translations, I ended up connecting with Brian Joel Conley, who's also known as @BaghdadBrian on Twitter. And I connected to him through Twitter, and he actually was one of several people that began a site called Alive in Egypt. And Alive in Egypt is a much more efficient site for translations and for updates from the internet community about the situation that was going on the ground there. So he recruited me, along with hundreds of other translators, to translate the voicemails for that website. So how that worked was him and his team uploaded all the voicemails as they were coming in from Speak to Tweet to a public spreadsheet on a Google document. It's really simple. That way, any of the translators who were linked to the spreadsheet through their Gmail could block off whichever voicemails they wanted to work on and translate them. Not only that, but I was connected through Skype chat and Google chat to all these hundreds of volunteers just like me, helping translating the voice messages from Arabic to English, German, Spanish, French, Hebrew. I mean, it was really incredible. It was a very humbling experience for me. And I ended up making and connecting with several people and friends all around the world. And we all watched and waited together the internet streams of BBC and Al Jazeera for that moment of truth, for Mubarak to step down. Several of my friends in Cairo were also directly involved in this revolution. This is my friend Hibel Kayal, and she is actually an editor for the Daily News in Egypt. And this is a picture of her just moments before Mubarak stepped down, taken in Tahrir Square. All the men were doing their prayers. And Hiba was a very special person to me during this time because her Twitter updates, before I could reach her by phone, were letting me know of the situation there in Cairo. And I found out from her that when she went to Tahrir Square to try to bring food and medical supplies to the protesters, Mubarak's thugs took it from her and threw everything away into the Nile. Not just from her, but from the hundreds of people that were trying to get in. Not only that, but her brother was beaten, him and his friends, and denied entry and just driven off. So I stayed in contact with her and relied really heavily on her as a news source. And then this picture is really incredible. I'm just going to fast forward a little bit here, because this is a picture of her the day after Mubarak fell, on February 12th. And she's holding Al Ahram newspaper. And in Egypt, that paper was like a mouthpiece state, like government-controlled paper. And for the first time in decades, it had a really bold front page. It says, Ashab askut an-nizam, which means the people overthrew the government or the system. So she was showing me here, she's smiling, and she's so happy because she's so amazed at this bold title, this bold front page. About a week after the revolution started, my dear friend Amna, whom I went to high school with in Kuwait, came to visit me. And we couldn't get through to a lot of people in the Middle East because even though the lines were back up in Egypt, everyone was trying to call and connect with people there. So we're just wondering about several of our friends we couldn't contact. And one of those friends was my friend Nadia, who leads a Kuwaiti youth theater company, and she is an activist and a photographer and a director. And we were joking that, who knows what Nadia's up to? She's probably off on an adventure. She's probably traveling somewhere. We haven't heard from her in a while, but we just hope she's okay. And the next morning, when we logged onto Facebook, we woke up and found this on our homepage. A picture of Nadia in Tahrir Square, and she'd uploaded a beautiful Facebook album documenting the situation, and it was one of the most beautiful albums I'd seen, and it also made me feel really connected to her and to the situation. So these are just some of the pictures that she uploaded out of hundreds. The day that Mubarak finally fell, I was actually in a dress rehearsal of a piece that I'd composed for voice and orchestra called Border Crossings. This piece was actually about that same journey my family undertook when we fled from Kuwait and ended safely in Egypt. In it, I had Arabic text and English spoken word I'd written and sang about my first vivid memories, about how I remembered the Iraqi tanks rolling into our streets and the soldiers, and how my father saved a man that was part of the Kuwaiti resistance from right outside my apartment, whose car had been attacked and bombed. And then, of course, I sang in it about how important Egypt was to me and dear to my heart. When I left that rehearsal, that was only a 20-minute long rehearsal, I took out my cell phone, and I had tens of missed calls and tens of text messages. And the first text message that I opened was from my friend Aisha, and it said, "Mubarak stepped down." It was a really powerful and poignant moment for me, of course, and I immediately started sobbing, and I was really, really happy. But nobody around me understood what was going on. They all thought I was crying over the rehearsal or something. But I didn't feel alone at that moment because I knew that I was just one of millions of Egyptians and people around the world who were feeling the same thing, who were feeling the same joy. And I knew that I was crying not alone, but as part of this huge social movement that I'd become a part of. And I was celebrating as everyone in Tahrir Square was celebrating. Now, up until I moved to Ann Arbor, people only asked me about Islam or the hijab, which is the veil, or why I wasn't wearing the veil, or about the Middle Eastern conflict when I told them about my background. And I'm saying up until I moved here because Ann Arbor and Dearborn and Detroit have a very large Arab community, and Ann Arbor is very special in that it's like this little bubble. Most of the people here are employed and educated, and it's not like the small town in Pennsylvania where I went to school for my undergraduate degree. So for the first time in my life, people, instead of portraying Arabs in this negative light and putting all these assumptions and stereotypes onto them, they were coming to me and they were saying, "We wish as Americans that we could display the same kind of strength and determination that people in Egypt are showing here." And it was amazing to me because even me, I'd always felt so wary of these same governments that were pushing and bullying my family around and the families of so many other people that were finally being overthrown. And so for me, it was the first time in my life that I'd seen such a positive force as the January 25th revolution. I'm really inspired and optimistic because to know that today I can log into Skype and I can connect with hundreds of translators online, volunteering, trying to spread the word from Egypt, trying to spread the message of these voicemails, and to know that for those 2 weeks that I was sitting at my computer, that I was glued to the internet and just waiting for Mubarak to step down, to know that in the 20 minutes that I had to leave all of that behind to go to this rehearsal of a piece I'd written specifically about that journey that my family undertook, and to know that in just those 20 minutes, when I just stopped not to look or watch or wait for history to happen, but when I was singing about how dear Egypt was to me in my heart, to know that in those 20 minutes alone, that's when Hosni Mubarak finally decided to step down. That was the best validation for me that things had changed so much since I was that 4-year-old girl.
We love you guys no matter what happens. We all want Mubarak to leave. We're with you. You're our family, blood related or not. We're all Egyptian. We all want one thing, and one thing that is important. We all want Egypt to change for the better.
What's really amazing about that voicemail is that there are hundreds of voicemails just like it if you go through the translation list. We are all Egypt. We are all Egyptian. We're with you, Egypt. We love you, Egypt. And what I find really touching about that is that, well, we're not. We're not all Egyptian, and we're not all Egypt, but we have the ability to empathize. We're all empathetic, and we can empathize with people's pain and joy and sorrow and comfort in these situations. And that's not really possible without a means of communication and a means of expressing one's voice. That video that I played in the very beginning of my talk, I layered all those voicemails together like that on purpose to highlight that when you get everyone's voice all at once, it just becomes a giant blur, and it becomes overwhelming. You can't even begin to comprehend it, and people's stories fall through the cracks. I think this is really important to think about, because when you look at these tragedies like the tsunami in Japan or the current uprisings in Libya, sometimes for people who don't have a connection there, it's really hard to try to comprehend that suffering. And I find that when you get individuals coming together, one by one, trying to, in this case, translate or trying to connect, that changes, because what happens is it becomes like a piece of music. In music, when you have independent lines existing together and each voice is highlighted but works together, that's called counterpoint. And with counterpoint, you develop towards a harmony. And I really believe that harmony could not ever be achieved without every single person that tries to communicate and understand and resist in whatever way that they can. Because we all have a story to share. We all have our independent voice. And that takes courage, yeah, but it takes a lot more courage to actually take the time to listen and try to understand, whether it's through Twitter or Facebook or these voicemails, or the easiest thing, just by reaching out to someone in your community. What the revolution in Egypt taught me, and I think taught a lot of people, is that we're all human. We all need our rights. We need our freedom. We need our dignity. And if you can get involved in a way that highlights that highlights not only your independent voice, because your voice is really important, but the voices of others that need to be heard, then I believe that is a revolution in and of itself. Thank you so much.